Okay, welcome to the Visible Workplace podcast. See the work, do the work. Annabel, welcome to today's episode, our first episode. Pretty exciting. How are you going today?
I'm fantastic, Tom. Great to be here with you. Really looking forward to delving into all things workplace. And today is going to be an exciting topic, managing emotions in the workplace, which is an incredibly important topic for anyone that works.
Well, there's certainly been some major changes to the workplace over the last couple of years, and it remains a critical area for most businesses or all businesses to try and dial in and get it working. And yet there are ongoing problems. Certainly the work from home movement, people quite quitting, people not getting purposes met, and then, as you said, the emotions that can come up around work. Very, very interesting in terms of when they work well, wonderful, people feel fulfilled, but when they're not working, can be a very difficult experience.
Yeah, well, Tom, we've all been there. We've all felt anxious, overwhelmed, possibly shamed at work, embarrassed, inadequate. These emotions, especially when they come up in a professional setting, a workplace, can be incredibly difficult to challenge and face. And just even knowing basic tactics about what to do in that moment. I think a really interesting question that I'd love to pose to you as a medical doctor is, before we get into possibly solving these problems and how to combat them in any way, shape, or form, I'd love you to tell us what is happening physiologically and from a medical perspective to our bodies when these overwhelming feelings come about. Somatic symptoms, our nervous system, physiologically, what is happening and why is it so, in terms of locus of control, that why does it feel so out of control?
Well, there's a lot there. I mean, my understanding of it is that essentially our neocortex, the big part of brain, gets shut down and we revert down to our limbic system. And at that point, we're no longer able to think so much as we're just coping with the emotional overload. And if it gets very severe, then back down into the reptilian brain at the brainstem into survival, flight, fight, or flee or freeze. They're the main defaults. And even though those systems are not appropriate to the actual experience, they get triggered. And suddenly I'm no longer operating as a particularly functional human being. And my brain shuts down. And often in that time, things go badly wrong. It's very easy to have catastrophic events at that point. But essentially, that's the main problem. As the emotions kick in, the brain shifts to reverting to lower levels, the emotional brain, and then even at sometimes the survival brain. And that's that we can no longer rationally kind of deal with what's going on.
Mm.
So this is a very interesting topic, of course, but the skill sets around recognizing when this has happened, or particularly recognizing when somebody else is in that situation. I mean, that's critical. That if I can recognize that my coworker has dropped into these states of emotional response or survival response, then my expectations have to change. And if I'm expecting them to continue to act as a rational human being or make best decisions, it's very, very difficult to do that. But if I can bring them out of that and go, hey, you know what? Looks like things aren't going so well. What's going on for you? And they can slow their breathing and basically allow their brains to shift back up into functioning at a higher level, then hopefully we have a lot better outcomes than if both people descend into those lower states and suddenly explosions or all sorts of stuff can happen.
So I suppose what's coming to my mind is first how pivotal it is to be educated around what is happening, why it's happening, and then, of course, what to do about it. And as you mentioned, whether it's a co-worker or whether it's your boss, the leaders of the workplace probably have an even bigger obligation to understand. Obviously everything is systemic, and a leader is going to have a profound impact on their staff, depending on how they respond to somebody else's, stress reaction. So I think education is really pivotal, and such a brilliant explanation from you as a doctor, because, that understanding of what's happening is, I think, really critical in terms of, why do I feel so out of control? And then, of course, educating people on what to do about it in the moment. Like the freeze, freeze or flight or fight modes are a really interesting and easy one to understand at a sort of a lay level. Should we talk about some of the things that people can do? But potentially, than running for the hills, because that's probably not going to solve anything.
Well, I think we should bring it back to the topic of the podcast. And rather than looking at what to do, why don't we look at, first of all, why does it happen in the first place?
Okay.
And I think that one of the challenges that I've identified that I see is that a lot of the work that we do is often difficult to see. And by that, I mean not necessarily that I'm working on this, editing this email or, consulting with this client, but the big picture. And that I might be thinking I'm doing a right job or the correct thing, but because we can't see the work, the chances of miscommunication, misunderstanding go way up. And in that experience, now the emotional overwhelm, now the survival response, but the initial problem may not be in terms of emotional management. If we could avoid the problems in the first place, it might allow us to get a whole lot more done in a much more effective way. But from what I've seen, it's often very difficult to manage the work of a business. And we could look at how people often do this. In small business, it might be communicating, hey, do this, do this, do this. In bigger businesses, they might have systems or project management systems for doing it. But even then, the ability to know, am I doing the right thing? And am I meeting expectations? It's very easy to lose these things in a modern workplace with the challenges that we've got. People working hybrid, people having to take days off because of sickness, because of kids, all of these issues that we're running, coming back into the office. And I think that that's probably one of the hopes of many leaders, is that if I just get people back in the office, then all my problems will be solved. But really, to me, what that allows for is a verbal discussion of the work. And that can help. At least I can kind of see the work by hearing it. Hey, do this, do this, do this. But as we get into bigger or more complex work, it can still break down. The opportunity for misunderstanding goes up. What I said may not be fed back to me. What you heard would be different. There's no checking. Literally hearing things differently because of the way that I hear words and I think, oh yeah, I got it. But in actual fact, that's not what the person was telling me at all.
Misinterpretation. And then it's almost like a domino effect, from there. So the misinterpretation might lead to a miscommunication and a, misunderstanding of, what we're actually trying to achieve, or just a general feeling of what does that other person want? What do they want? What do they expect from me? And this comes back to what you're saying, the issue with a lack of transparency in the workplace. And then you talk about the hybrid model, and working from home is at this point in time probably not going to disappear anytime soon. People are really embracing working from home and having more balance in their lives. So there has to be better solutions to providing this transparency, because I think without the transparency, there is to some degree an underlying level of anxiety. And, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? If you have that feeling or that thought to any degree, it's going to cause stress.
That's really interesting. So even before we have a blow up or a difficult situation, a frustrated boss, a fearful employee, even if nothing is going wrong, what I'm hearing from you is that people are operating in a state of anxiety across the board because can't really tell, am I doing the right job? Am I doing it correctly? I'm not sure. I've asked 3 times. I thought this. And then if I deliver the work and it's wrong and I get in trouble, but that anxiety in itself is reducing down my ability to be in my neocortex and coming back to the emotions. It's reducing my ability to do good work. It's not a great outcome.
It's a constant distraction. If you're always thinking, I'm not sure whether I'm doing the right thing, a common problem would be, I don't want to ask my superior. I may, expose myself. They may discover I'm not across something, or I don't know how to do this or that. And then it's like a perpetuating cycle. And I think that's when a lot of work gets shelved. I'll come back to that. It doesn't get done. And then, all the clever software that may exist, well, goes out the window. You can't put the tick on that one. So then you have this situation where the worker feels like their hands are tied. They don't know what to do, and the anxiety levels are forever increasing.
Well, when the work doesn't get done, that I can see how that almost makes it worse and worse. I don't know how to deal with this, so I'm going to put it off. But by putting it off, it doesn't solve the underlying problem of, I don't really know what I'm doing here, and I'm not sure whether I'm doing it right, and I can't ask, so I'm just going to push it away. And then it still doesn't resolve it, though. It's not like it's getting done. And I can't even go up to the person and say, look, I don't know how to do this. Or am I doing this right? Can I get some feedback?
It's
It's that level of
confronting.
fear. It's confronting, particularly if there's a past history of having asked before and people have not responded well. They've criticized, so they say, how can you not understand this? I thought I told you to do it this way already. There's very poor ways of responding. And each of those events then presumably increase anxiety. I'm now living in a state of fear. I'm not really enjoying work. I want to quit, start having sick days. And from the boss's perspective, even looking at the work, they're like, why didn't this work get done? And they're having not very much empathy around the anxiety or the fear. They're just seeing the work didn't get done. That has to be done by 5 p.m. today. CO close business, COB. And that's where they're coming from. And these two very diametrically opposed experiences for people. Someone trying to do the work with fear and anxiety, not able to do it. The boss applying more pressure to get the work done and not able to recognize, hey, what's going on here? I'm not understanding why you're not doing this work. And it often could be the boss may not even know. They're like, you sort it out. But if that's not communicated, then that's another, it's like, hey, I just want it done. I don't mind how you do it. Can in itself be a significant anxiety, because it's like, well, what resources do I need? Can I try this? Can I mess this up? Can I make mistakes? And again, we're shutting down the brain's ability to proceed with the work, and nothing gets done.
That's right. And I think there's also something worth mentioning, in regards to the role of the boss and the worker. I feel like in a lot of cases, the worker wants meaningful, good work to be done, but enter this cycle of stress and panic, and I don't know what to do. that gets, completely knocked over. And then also the boss, to be fair, of course, wants the work done and the results, because that person is thinking of, what they have to achieve and their KPIs. And so both parties may actually have the best of intentions, and we know meaningful good work is really good for people. But when it turns into a stressful situation, as you've mentioned, that's when the sick days and the work becomes, really difficult to do. And they, think about leaving the job, and the boss gets frustrated. So, both sides probably have, really great intentions, but everything in the middle gets sort of, lost and difficult, and problems arise because of, essentially this lack of transparency. And that's, not only in, how do I do things, but as we talked about, the communication and the miscommunication, misunderstanding.
Look, I love that you bring up the fact that both the boss and the team member both want to do good work. They
It's
both
an important
benefit from
element to
that.
keep in mind.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not like everyone's
We're
out
not
to
at war.
totally,
We're not trying to be at war here. Yeah.
yeah. Like it doesn't make sense to be right. Well, I'm just going to do a poor job, and that I think that the value of work is very significant. People who are in long-term unemployed positions, often their self-worth declines, that there isn't that getting to the end of the day and knowing that I had a great day, I did good work, I did what was required. So the intentions are there, and yet the outcomes are not there. And I think that the podcast, we're going to explore that. Like, what keeps happening here? And already we've kind of covered a couple of things that stand out to me. It's like, well, how do I do things? Like, how do I actually get this work done? And then the second one is, well, what's the desired result? Like, what are we going for? And if I'm clear and I can see what the result is, and I'm clear on how that should be done, and that doesn't mean like robotic step, 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 but it could be, hey, we found this to work, and feel free to improve it. Or we don't really know how to do this. Go create it, mess around. Like, they're both how to do the work. But without that communication, if I choose the wrong one, then I'm going to be back into that anxiety, fear, low performance. And particularly if their pressure is on to perform, then it actually makes it worse. It's like,
So
yeah.
is this a question? Is this a conversation more heading towards leaving, suppressing what you're thinking and feeling, and going to more authenticity and kind of the archaic ways of just figure it out yourself, and you might remain in that stressful state, moving towards being authentic and actually raising problems and communicating better, as well as the systematic, I've done this, I haven't done this. Is that something that we could be proponents of?
Well, I mean, to me, the structure of how we deal with these problems is probably the big thing. I can be authentic in many aspects of my life and have an authentic conversation with my boss, but if it doesn't actually relate to the problem in the work that I'm doing, it doesn't really get me there. Doesn't do much. It's like, wow, I really appreciate your authenticity and your honesty and your directness. But the fact that I don't know, you had a great time on your holiday last week is not going to deal with the actual problem of, I'm anxious about this work outcome, this project that's got to be completed. But if I can be authentic in terms of revealing the problems that I've got, is it
That's
is it relevant, authentic and relevant? Now we've got a shot, particularly if both people are on the same page about recognizing, all right, hey, this isn't, I'm seeing that you're not progressing here. How are you feeling? I'm feeling really anxious and fearful. I'm not really sure what's going on. And then having a structure of like, okay, well, is it what are you not clear on? Is it the results that we're going for? Or is it the way of doing that work? Or is it something else? Is it missing pieces? And having some kind of structure for working through to solve what is the actual problem and get both people back on target, back on course, and get them out of anxiety, out of fear, out of the emotional experience, and up into, okay, great, I'm clear. I know that we're both heading towards this thing. We can both see what we're doing and see what we're going for. Now we've got some congruence. And if I don't perform, then we've got another conversation that can happen. It's like, okay, hey, I see that we were going for this and you knew that you're going to do it this way. What happened? And I think there's less judgment in that. There's an experience of being able to be more authentic and say, look, okay, I thought that we were doing this, this, and this. So I tried this, and then that went wrong, and I pivoted here, and this is where we're at.
Yeah.
And that conversation that's had in a calm, rational way is a very different conversation than two elevated emotional people that are freaked out. But the boss in anger, the employee in fear, we're probably not going to get to the bottom of what to change or what to try now or what has to happen. Do we need to call the client and let them know, hey, this happened and this happened. This is what we're going to try now. The expectation is, hey, we actually need 2 more days. And I think that clarity and that ability to have this structure that's going to allow people to get more work done in a good way. This is the outcome. And then boss is happy, business is making money, employees happy, team members happy. Hey, I had a great day at work. I learned, I felt secure. We troubleshot and worked out what went wrong and fixed it. And then next time it's going to work great. And this to me is these are things that we can delve into instead of a lot of the problems that with low productivity, difficulty with productivity, difficulty with people not feeling safe. That's what I'm kind of excited about this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, just coming back to, I suppose, maybe the leaders, there needs to be a message and a sense of, in this workplace, there is no judgment, and you are free to be authentic, and you are free to bring your problems and anxieties and stress to me, and there won't be any sort of dismissal of them, or there's got to be a feeling of, I'm happy to work through these things with you, before there can be the actual systems in place to be functioning in any sort of way, shape, or form. So it's a people problem as well as a systems problem.
Well, I think in terms of I'm not going to have any judgment on what's getting done in the workplace. That to me has a few problems. It depends on what stage that we're talking about. So if we've got problems and I'm feeling really judged and I can't talk about them, then we can't move on and solve them. But if I'm confident that I'm like, hey, this is what's going on, I can bring it to the boss or the other team members, talk about it, and we can resolve it, and then we can progress. Then when that's done, then we can judge what got done. I think it's important to be able to say, hey, that's of high quality, well done, that was great. Or, hey, no, that didn't hit up and it didn't meet the standard. What do we need to do? What do we need to pivot? It's not
It's
like a free for all, everyone just do everything however you want, because that's unlikely to work as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's a
No,
sort of,
exactly. It's sort of like a micro reappraisal or reassessing situations in a positive and productive way that you could bring to the boss, and that could be worked through, I think, in a really good way. Yeah, it's not just bringing up, I'm struggling, I can't do this, I'm not coping. It's more of let's review, reassess, reappraise what's happening, so we can all continue to keep working forward, moving forward.
yeah. I
Is
know,
Yeah,
and that again, that structure for being able to have that conversation is very interesting to me. It's like, okay, well, what were we trying to do? When you executed this work, what was the point of it? Was it to record a podcast? Was it to take a client brief? Was it to get clear on the avatar for the business? Was it to complete the tax return? What was the point of it? And then, okay, well, what's the outcome of that? So, and then how did you do it? Some work just has to be done repetitively. It's kind of boring. It's like execute, execute. We do this, this, and this, and then some things happen. But I think in the increasingly complex world where we have so much going on, that the ability for our minds to keep up with it all or remember on how to do it all can go out the window. And so let's come back to that situation of the work hasn't gone well and the conversations between the team member and the boss. If they just talk about it and there's no documentation, there's no ability to see what was being done, there's no ability to see what should be done, even if that conversation happened, it's highly likely that details will be missed, the work won't get done, and they're going to loop around and find themselves in exactly the same position with a few different things that got done differently because they can't see what got done, they can't see what the result was. And so this looping experience would be also very frustrating. And once again, we're dissolving down into emotional responses, survival responses. So the ability to see, to me, is the critical thing. And like, how do we do that? Well, that's an interesting conversation. But I think people in the workplace have had these experiences. I don't know, like where things just are intractably unresolved because they loop around, have conversations, but they're not solving the real problem. I don't know whether you've seen that at all in any of your adventures in life.
Um, Probably, yeah, here and there. Yes, yeah. So I suppose with the keeping a track of even the difficult conversations. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I mean, yes, it could be. It
Yeah,
could be in like, I mean, we're entering into this world of AI note taking where just the notes get produced. But if I'm 3 weeks down the track from that meeting and I can't find that note, then how do we know what got discussed? And then also, even if the discussion got happened and there was action steps, like, did they get taken? What do I do with those action steps? Oh, we said that we'd do this, this, and this, but I never went into my to-do list and therefore nothing changed. And then
yeah.
we're back
So
in the
it's
same
kind of
position.
back to well, it's on to accountability then. If everything's tracked, then accountability kind of comes into the equation. And I think even on, if it's not on a conscious level, on a subconscious level, if people know, their things are being recorded, there is accountability. And I don't think there's any motivator quite like accountability, certainly from a psychological perspective. And I think that's one of the actual beauties and positive things about tracking everything. At first, it may seem a little bit sort of intrusive almost that everything's tracked. But if you're using it to your benefit, and your employers are using it for accountability, well, you're both using it for accountability. I think there's that's a perfect combination of getting the most out of people and getting the most out of your own work and your own self as well, because it can come back to a motivating factor such as self accountability. Tracking everything and progressing everything can keep everybody in order. So I think there's some huge benefits there to keeping absolutely everything tracked and recorded.
Look, and there is a cost to tracking. There is a investment of time that has to happen, or in order to document, hey, this is something that's important to keep a track of. And so, if I'm not in the habit of doing that, then it just falls away. But if I do have that accountability or that or the tracking in place, then at least it allows me to have accountability. I can bring it up and say, yeah, I said that I'd do that and I did it, or I said that I would do that and I didn't. If we've just lost that data completely, then I can rely on my memory. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I've got 3 kids. You've got 3 kids, partners, life. There's so much going on that if I'm not in the habit of tracking things and capturing what I said I would do, capturing the changes, making those changes, and having them visible in my life somewhere, then even if I've got good intentions for accountability, it's very hard to actually do anything with it because the data gets lost.
So on that note, I'd love to talk about a real life experience of mine, which I think really goes a long way for talking about the benefits of tracking. So with my job as a provisional psychologist, a rehabilitation consultant, everything is tracked with my work. And as you mentioned, we both have families, both have 3 children. Life is extremely busy. And one of the amazing things about all my work being tracked is that I can take away one major stressor from my life as an employee. And that is, do they think I'm doing the work? So if I need to have some degree of flexibility in my work, one major one as a parent and mother of 3 children is getting our 3 children to their respective care and collecting them each day. And so my boss is agreeable that there needs to be some flexibility there. It's hugely stressful for me to get to work on time and leave at a reasonable hour with me getting all the work done. So for me, the tracking is really important, because if I'm going to get to work a little bit later and leave a little bit earlier so that I can be responsible some days, not all days, my husband can do some days, for getting them to and from their work, and I haven't done everything I need to do in those hours, I know that I can log on later that night at 8 p.m., do an hour or 2 of work. That can be tracked from my employer's perspective. As long as the work is being done, what does it really matter if she's not in the office at 7:30 a.m. and leaving at 6:30 p.m.? So the tracking is really important for someone like me, and for probably you as well. So that takes away a pretty critical stressor that's a huge factor in my world. And that is, one of the great beauties of tracking.
I love the example because it's got a couple of things that stand out to me. One is there's flexibility for you to deal with your life, your responsibilities. There's a recognition from your employer that, hey, you're not just existing to come to work, but you have other responsibilities. But in the ability to track the work, and I can know that I saw the work got done at 8 till 10 p.m. I mean, there are some challenges around that in terms of working at night, but if it means that the kids are picked up, and that is an important aspect, but I know as the employer that the work got done because I can log on and see the tracking, then I love the outcome for you, which is I'm not worried I'm going to get fired because I did the work, but no one can see it.
Correct. That is
really cool.
That
Yeah.
is the key point. It's that I am de-stressed because of the tracking, and that's huge. For anyone that, you don't even have to be a parent. You just, everyone has other things in their life that have to happen, and they could be, there's a whole host of responsibilities, from something as simple as getting to the gym, looking after an elderly parent. Certain things crop up that are almost, where it can be emergencies, health, anything. And for me to be able to prove that I'm still doing the work is probably the number one de-stressor.
I like it.
Mm.
And yeah, that is really cool. So this idea of tracking, being able to see, you can see, employer can see, other team members potentially can see if required. There's many advantages to being willing to make that investment into tracking and making it easy, making it something that just happens as naturally as possible. I think is something that we should be working towards in terms of our workplace in advanced first world countries.
So I suppose to
Or
sort of,
even actually time out for that. Looking at where the world's going, like many businesses are using virtual assistants, team members in Philippines, in India, in Pakistan, all around the world. It's not just first world. I'm going to take that back. I actually think this is a critical factor playing out in the workplace across the board. It's
so
really
I
cool.
suppose
Yeah.
to kind of go back to the very beginning, which is managing emotions, it's interesting that we've come to this point, which is actually it's the tracking that's almost managing the emotions in this sense, rather than any practical tips that we could have given today. I'm a psychologist, you're a doctor. We could have run through a whole host of things. But in actual fact, we've come to a major solution being that tracking is, a key aspect to being able to manage stress and emotions in the workplace.
And I think that a lot of people may have had some negative experiences around tracking. But when we start to look at the experience of everybody involved having a lot better experience at work, then suddenly that small investment regularly into tracking everything becomes a really high return on investment activity.
Love it.
All
Should we
right,
leave
mate.
it there today?
That is all for today. I think we should continue this topic around tracking of work, being able to see the work. Really fun conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to meeting up next week. I hope everyone else will enjoy our beginning episode. What are your final words, Anna?
Final words are, everyone just take a deep breath, and we're here to look after you. That was a lot of fun, Tom, and yeah, really looking forward to next week and yeah, helping out some people with do the work, see the work, the visible
And
workplace.
the Visible Workplace. Thanks everyone for joining in. Look forward to seeing you next week. Catch you then.
See ya.